It was a chilly morning in the Chesapeake. I got out of bed slowly, feeling my joints ache, a sure sign that rain was coming. At my age, my body can predict the weather better than any meteorologist. 72 years is a long time, and with 30 years of driving a truck across the country, it's no wonder every move is a struggle. I walked to the window. My small house is on a quiet street where mostly retired people like me live. The view from here is of neat lawns and sparse maple trees beginning to change color. Chesapeake is the quiet town that has become my home since Eleanor's death. Everything here is measured and predictable, just what an old man like me needs. "Good morning, Eleanor," I murmured familiarly, glancing at the photograph on the bedside table. "My wife died 15 years ago of lung cancer. Too soon. She was only 55. Only this picture remains. Eleanor laughing, holding our son Quentin in her arms. He was about 5 at the time. Quentin. At the thought of my son, I felt a familiar heaviness in my chest. The last time we saw each other was Christmas, almost 7 months ago. He'd come for 3 hours, brought some trinkets as a gift, and left, citing an important meeting. Since then, only occasional calls on Sundays, and those have been like a mandatory program. Quentin was always a difficult child. After Eleanor died, I was left alone with a 13-year-old who blamed the whole world for his mother's death. I tried to be a good father, but I spent most of my time on voyages. I had a family to feed, a house to pay. When I returned, Quentin would greet me with either silence or another problem at school. I went into the kitchen, put the kettle on. My breakfast had been the same for years: oatmeal, peanut butter toast, and a cup of strong tea. Eleanor always laughed at my habit of eating the same thing, said I was like an old bear who wouldn't change his den. The morning ritual was interrupted by a phone call. I flinched. It was too early for a phone call. "Mr. Holder?" It was an unfamiliar male voice. "This is Dr. Bishop from Riverside Clinic. Your test results are in, and I'd like you to come in for an appointment as soon as possible." Something in his tone made me tense. "Was it something serious?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Can you come today?" I agreed to a 2 o'clock appointment and hung up. Strangely, I felt no fear, more like a kind of numbing calm. At my age, bad news from doctors is no longer surprising. I drove to the clinic in my old Ford. The car was almost 20 years old, but it was still as reliable as the day I bought it. I always thought of it as a kind of symbol. Good things, like good people, stay true despite age and scuffs. Dr. Bishop, a lean, middle-aged man with attentive eyes, met me in his office. He stared at the computer monitor for a long moment, then turned to me. "Mr. Holder, I won't beat around the bush. You've been diagnosed with prostate cancer. Based on the biopsy results, it's an aggressive form." I nodded, accepting the information. Strangely, my first thought was, "Eleanor, I think I'll be with you soon." And the second, completely practical, "How much will it cost?" "What are the odds?" I asked. "With timely treatment, quite good. I recommend surgery followed by radiation therapy. Considering your age and general health, I would say you have a good chance of a full recovery." "How much will the treatment cost?" Dr. Bishop gave me a figure that took my breath away. "Even with my insurance, I'd have to put most of my savings away." "I realize it's a substantial amount," he added, noticing my reaction. "But in your case, delay could be dangerous." I left the clinic with a folder of documents and a heavy heart. Sitting in my car, I stared at the phone for a long time, wondering whether I should call Quentin. Our relationship was strained, but he was my son after all. Besides, he was an insurance agent. Perhaps he could help me sort out my insurance, find some additional coverage options. That evening, I dialed his number. "Dad?" I could hear the surprise in his voice. I don't call much on weekdays. "Hey, Quentin, how are you?" "I'm okay. Busy. Something wrong?" I took a deep breath. "Yeah, son. I need to talk to you. In person." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I'm busy right now, Dad. How about this weekend?" "It's important, Quentin." I rarely insisted, but this was the occasion. "I went to the doctor today, and the news, not good news." Another pause, then a sigh. "Good. I'll come by tomorrow night. Is that okay?" Quentin arrived the next day around 6 in the evening. I heard his brand new Audi pull up in front of the house. Too expensive a car for a humble insurance agent, but Quentin always liked to impress. He's 42, but he still lives like he's 25. Fancy clothes, expensive restaurants, constant entertainment. At the same time, I knew his financial situation was far from stable. He'd come to me for help a few times when he'd gotten into debt. "Hi, Dad," he said as he entered the house. "You look terrible." It was his usual greeting. No hug, no warmth. "Hello to you too," I said, inviting him into the kitchen. "Would you like some tea? Do you have anything stronger?" I pulled out the bottle of whiskey I kept for rare guests. Quentin poured himself a generous portion and sat down across from me. "So tell me, what's going on with your health?" I told him about the diagnosis, the recommended treatment, and the cost. Quentin listened, sipping his whiskey from time to time. His face remained impenetrable. "This is serious," he finally said. "What about the insurance?" "It only covers part of it. I'll have to use my savings." At the mention of savings, I noticed the change in Quentin's gaze. There was an interest, almost a predatory glint in it. "How much do you have set aside?" I told him the amount. Over the years as a trucker, I'd managed to save a decent amount of money. I lived frugally, didn't spend it on excesses. I put most of it away, first for Quentin's education, then for my own old age. Now that money could save my life. "Not bad," Quentin said, and I heard a note in his voice that I didn't like. "Where do you keep it?" "In the bank, of course. Where else?" "Which one?" His question sounded too insistent. "At First National," I answered, surprised at his interest. "I've had a savings account there for over 30 years. Quentin nodded as if memorizing the information. "And access to the account? Do you have online banking?" "Yes, the bank insisted I activate that service, although I prefer to go to the branch in person. This new technology isn't for me." "Do you need help managing your account?" Quentin offered. I could help with transfers, paying for medical treatment and the like. His sudden concern surprised me. Quentin didn't usually take an interest in my affairs. "I think I can handle it," I answered cautiously. "But thank you for the offer." Quentin suddenly became unusually caring. He washed the dishes after dinner, asked me how I was feeling, even offered to stay the night. It was so unlike him I felt awkward. "Dad, I was thinking," he said as we sat in the living room, "you should get me a power of attorney, in case you're in the hospital and can't handle your own money. I could help pay for treatment, bills, and things like that." I looked at my son. Was there genuine concern in his eyes, or was it just me? I'd so rarely seen anything but indifference or annoyance in him in recent years that I didn't trust my judgment. "Maybe you're right," I answered slowly. "I'll think about it." Quentin stayed the night, and the next morning was strangely domestic. He made breakfast, which was completely uncharacteristic of him, and kept talking about the power of attorney. "You know, Dad, I can get the paperwork ready today. I know a notary, and he'll do it quickly and without any questions." Something in his insistence made me wary. But on the other hand, his words made sense. If I was going to have surgery and long-term treatment, someone would have to help me with financial matters, and who if not my son? "Okay," I finally agreed. "Let's make a power of attorney." Quentin shone. "Great. I'll organize everything. You have nothing to worry about, Dad. I'll take care of everything." I looked at my son and wanted to believe that there was genuine concern behind his words. Perhaps the news of my illness had finally awakened some filial feelings in him. Perhaps, in the face of possible loss, he had realized the value of family. I really wanted to believe it. so I signed the power of attorney Quentin brought the next day. I didn't even read the legal wording. Why should I, if it was my son? Who else could I trust if not him? Quentin left in the evening, promising to return in a few days to help prepare for treatment. He was unusually attentive and caring, even hugging me goodbye for the first time in years. Watching his car disappear around the corner, I felt strangely relieved. Perhaps my illness would be the thing that would finally bring us closer together. Perhaps through this ordeal, we would become a real family again. If only I knew how wrong I was. It was a week after Quentin's visit. I was preparing to begin treatment, gathering paperwork, consulting with doctors. Dr. Bishop insisted that I start therapy as soon as possible, and I decided not to delay making the first payment for treatment. It was Wednesday, the day I usually paid my bills and dealt with financial matters. I sat down at the old computer I had purchased a couple years ago at Quentin's insistence. "Dad, you're living like you're in the Stone Age," he was saying. "Learn to use online banking. It'll make your life easier." I resisted but eventually gave in. It was indeed convenient to keep track of my finances from the comfort of my own home. I turned on my computer, opened my browser, and logged onto the bank's website. The system took a long time to load, and when my account page finally opened, I thought there had been some kind of error. Instead of the amount that should have been in the account, I saw numbers close to zero. A few $100s was all that was left of my years of savings. I reloaded the page thinking it was some kind of glitch. The result was the same. I could feel my heart starting to pound faster and my mouth drying up with increasing panic. Maybe it's a system error, I thought, and decided to check the transaction history. What I saw made me numb. Several large withdrawals in the last 3 days. All my savings had been transferred to some unknown account, and all the transactions were authorized using my account. I didn't realize what was going on. Had someone hacked into my account? But how? I rarely used the internet. My computer was protected by antivirus, and I hadn't shared my password with anyone. Suddenly, I was struck with a terrible realization. Quentin, power of attorney. His sudden interest in my finances. It all came together in an excruciatingly clear picture. I grabbed the phone and dialed my son's number. It was ringing, but no one answered. I left a message, trying to sound calm even though everything was boiling inside me. "Quentin, it's Dad. Please call me back as soon as possible. It's regarding my bank account." I hung up the phone and sat still for a few minutes, trying to gather my thoughts. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation for what was happening. But deep inside, I already knew the truth. I decided to take action. The first thing I did was to call the bank and report suspicious activity in my account. The bank employee was polite but not overly reassuring. "Mr. Holder, according to our records, all transactions were authorized using your account and confirmed with your personal information. Furthermore, we have information that you executed a power of attorney for your son, Quentin Holder, who has full authority over your funds." "But I did not authorize the withdrawal of such sums," I objected. "He should have consulted me." "It's a matter of your personal arrangements, Mr. Holder. Legally, the power of attorney authorizes him to act on your behalf without further consultation. If you feel that your power of attorney is abusing his authority, you should contact the police or an attorney." After this conversation, I sat looking out the window at the gray Chesapeake sky. The rain I had been predicting with my aching joints had finally begun, drumming on the roof of my small house. I felt old, tired, and betrayed. The phone rang, snapping me out of my gloomy thoughts. I grabbed the receiver, hoping to hear Quentin, but it was Dr. Bishop. "Mr. Holder, I'm calling to see if you've set a start date for the treatment. We need to schedule the treatments." I swallowed a lump in my throat. "Dr. Bishop, I'm having some, financial difficulties. I need some time to sort things out." There was a pause. "Mr. Holder, I understand that treatment is expensive, but delaying your case could be dangerous. Perhaps we could discuss installment plans or financial assistance." Yes, that would be very helpful. I will contact you in the next few days as soon as I've dealt with an urgent matter. After talking to the doctor, I tried calling Quentin again. This time the phone was completely off. I left another message on the voicemail, no longer hiding my anger and frustration. I spent the rest of the day trying to find any information on my son's whereabouts. I called his co-workers, checked social media with great difficulty. I've never been great with these technologies. Finally, after calling one of his friends with whom Quentin sometimes played golf, I learned that my son had taken a vacation and flown to the Bahamas. He bragged about booking a room at some fancy hotel, his buddy said. Said it was going to be his dream vacation. A dream vacation. On me. At the expense of the money that was going to save my life. I felt something inside me break. All the love, all the patience, all the hopes I had for my son all crumbled under the weight of this betrayal. In desperation, I texted him, "Quentin, I know you took my money. That money was meant for my medical treatment. I am sick with cancer, son. Please return at least part of it. I need to start treatment as soon as possible." The reply came a few hours later, and it was like a blow under the breath. "Your treatment is not my problem. Bye. Enjoying my vacation. Talk to you when I get back." I reread that message over and over again, unable to believe my eyes. How could my own son, the boy I'd raised alone after Eleanor's death, be so heartless, so cruel? I spent the night sleepless, tossing and turning in bed, torn by pain, anger, and a sense of helplessness. By morning, I had made a decision. The first thing I did was call my old friend Whitney Daggett. We had met years ago when I gave him a ride in my truck after his car broke down on the highway. He was an attorney, now retired, but we've maintained a friendship over the years. "Whitney, I need your help," I said as soon as he picked up the phone. "It's about my will." "Sure, Ambrose, what's wrong?" I told him the whole story, the diagnosis, the power of attorney, Quentin's betrayal. Whitney listened in silence, only occasionally asking clarifying questions. "I'm sorry about what happened, old man," he said at last. "What do you want to do?" "I want to change the will. I want to disinherit Quentin. Completely." "Are you sure?" "It's a big step." "I'm absolutely sure. He stole money that could have saved my life. Money I've been saving my whole life. And he hasn't shown a shred of remorse. I don't want him to get anything after I'm dead." Whitney sighed. "I understand. When do you want to do it?" "Tonight. Now. Before it's too late." We agreed to meet at his house in 2 hours. Whitney had all the connections she needed to get the paperwork done quickly and with no questions asked. As I was getting ready for the meeting, I looked at the picture of Eleanor with little Quentin. The boy in the picture was smiling, his eyes glowing with love and trust. What had happened to that child? Where had I made a mistake, that my son had grown up so selfish and heartless? Whitney's house was a 20-minute drive from mine. It was a cozy colonial-style mansion surrounded by a manicured garden. Whitney met me on the doorstep, a tall, lean man with gray hair and shrewd eyes. "Come in, Ambrose. I'm all set." We set up in his office. Whitney had already drafted a new will. "I've made changes according to your wishes," he said. "Quentin is completely disqualified from inheritance, but I need to know to whom you want to leave your property." The question took me by surprise. I was so focused on the idea of disinheriting Quentin that I hadn't thought about who would inherit my modest fortune. "Yeah, I don't know," I admitted. "I have no other relatives." "Perhaps some kind of charitable foundation," Whitney suggested. "Or friends." I thought about it. I didn't have many friends, and the ones I did have didn't need my money. Charity, maybe. But which foundation to choose? "Let's leave that question open for now," Whitney suggested, seeing my doubts. "The main thing now is to cancel the old will, where Quentin was the sole beneficiary. We can put in a specific beneficiary later when you've made up your mind." I agreed to this suggestion. We executed documents revoking the previous will and added a clause explicitly excluding Quentin from being a possible heir under any circumstances. "Do you want me to give Quentin formal notice?" Whitney asked when we were done with the paperwork. I wondered. Part of me wanted Quentin to know the consequences of his betrayal as soon as possible. But the other part, the more rational part, realized that I needed to focus on more important things right now. "No, not yet. Let him enjoy his vacation. He'd know when he got back." Whitney nodded understandingly. "How are you doing now? I mean, financially. How do you plan to pay for your treatment?" That question snapped me back to the harsh reality. My savings were gone. I was left with a house, a small pension, and a few $100s in my account, too little to pay for expensive treatment. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Maybe I'll sell the house." "Don't rush into that decision," Whitney advised. "Let's think about it together. Are there any assistance programs for people in your situation, or treatment options that are covered by insurance?" We talked about options for a while longer. Whitney promised to help with finding information about financial aid and support programs for cancer patients. By the time I got home, it was getting dark. I felt strangely relieved after changing my will. It was a small act of resistance, a way of showing that I wasn't giving up, that Quentin's betrayal wouldn't go unpunished. I sat in a chair by the window, looking out at the quiet street. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp. The windows were lit up in the neighboring house. The Thornton family had come home. I saw Mr. Thornton hugging his teenage son as he helped him unload sports equipment from the car. This simple gesture of love and caring gave me a painful prick of envy. I had once dreamed that Quentin and I would have the same warm relationship, that despite all the difficulties and conflicts, we would remain a family, that in my old age I could count on his support and care. Now that dream has been shattered. Quentin showed his true colors. He chose money over me, luxury vacations over his own father's health. I pulled out Eleanor's picture and stared at it for a long time. "I'm sorry, darling," I whispered. "It seems I've done a poor job of raising our son." But even as I said it, I realized that the fault wasn't mine alone. Quentin had made his own choices. He's an adult, responsible for his actions, and now he has to face the consequences of those choices. He's lost not only my trust, but his inheritance. And when he returns from his luxurious vacation, he's in for a nasty surprise. For the first time in a long time, I felt determined. I wasn't going to give up. I would find a way to pay for the treatment. I would fight for my life, for my dignity. And if Quentin thinks he can betray me with impunity, he's sorely mistaken. The morning was clear and the clouds of yesterday had disappeared from the sky. I woke up early, as I'd gotten used to over the years as a trucker. The golden rays were shining through the blinds, painting fanciful patterns on the floor. Despite the troubles of the last few days, I felt strangely calm. Perhaps it was the result of my decision to disinherit Quentin. At least I had done something, not been completely helpless in the face of betrayal. Over a cup of tea, I pondered the day ahead. I needed to meet with Whitney to discuss the way forward. Yesterday, we had just drafted the basic document revoking the old will, but we had many more issues to resolve. I called Whitney right after breakfast. "Good morning, Ambrose." His voice sounded cheerful. "How are you today?" "I've been better, but I'm hanging in there. Whitney, I've been thinking about what we discussed yesterday, about notifying Quentin about the change of will." "And what have you decided?" "I want it done officially through an attorney. I want him to understand the gravity of the situation." Whitney was quiet for a second. "All right, I can prepare a formal notice. But there's just one thing, Ambrose. Are you sure you don't want to talk to him in person first? Give him a chance to explain himself?" I sighed. It was a question I'd been asking myself all night. "No, Whitney." His message was very clear. "Your treatment is not my problem, not yet." What was there to explain? He knew I was sick and still took the money meant for my treatment. This is not a mistake or a misunderstanding. It's a conscious choice. I see, Whitney said. In that case, I'll prepare a formal notice. We can send it by registered mail or by courier when he returns. Thank you, friend. Can we meet today to go over the details? We arranged to meet at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I had a few hours to prepare and think about other pressing matters. Chief among them was the financing of treatment. I sat down at my desk and began to make a list of everything I owned that could be sold. The house was my main asset, but I didn't want to sell it. It wasn't just a piece of real estate, but a place filled with memories of living with Eleanor, of the years when Quentin was a child. Plus, the selling process could drag on, and the money for treatment was needed now. What else? The old Ford? It's not going to fetch much, but it's something. The vinyl record collection I've had for years, fishing equipment, tools from the garage? All of these had some value, but could hardly cover even a fraction of the cost of treatment. I leaned back in my chair, feeling despair coming on. Then I picked up the phone and dialed Dr. Bishop's number. I needed to find out if there were any installment options or patient assistance programs for my situation. The conversation with Dr. Bishop was encouraging. He told me about several charitable programs that help cancer patients pay for treatment and promised to see if I fit their criteria. He also mentioned the possibility of participating in a clinical trial that could significantly reduce the cost of treatment. Mr. Holder, Dr. Bishop said at the end of the conversation, I understand that the financial side of the issue is important, but don't forget about the main thing, your health. The sooner we start treatment, the better the chances of success. I understand, doctor. Believe me, I'm doing everything I can to solve this problem as soon as possible. After talking to the doctor, I felt a little better. At least there was hope that even without the money stolen by Quentin, I could get the treatment I needed. At 2 o'clock, I drove up to Whitney's house. He met me in the garden where he was working, pruning rose bushes. It's good to see you, Ambrose, he said, taking off his gardening gloves. Let's go inside. I've made tea. In Whitney's office, there were papers on the desk. He showed me a draft of the official notice to Quentin. The document was in dry legal language, but the gist of it was clear. Quentin Holder was excluded from inheriting Ambrose Holder's estate under a new will, properly executed and probated. I think that should be clear enough, Whitney said. But there is one more thing we must discuss. In the previous will, you named Quentin not only as heir, but also as executor of the will. We need to appoint a new executor. I've been thinking. The executor of the will should be someone I trust, someone who can handle the legal formalities after my death. The first person who came to mind was Whitney himself. Would you be willing to be the executor of my will? I asked. You're the only one I can trust to do it. Whitney smiled. I'm honored by your trust, Ambrose, but there's a catch. I'm not much younger than you are. What if I leave early? We need someone who's guaranteed to outlive us both. He was right, of course. You can't get ahead of yourself at our age. Do you have any suggestions? I asked. Yes, there is one person I trust. A young lawyer who used to be my pupil. Now he has his own practice. His name is Nathaniel Cross. He's a competent and honest man. I can get in touch with him if you don't mind. I agreed. We decided that Whitney would arrange a meeting with Nathaniel in the next few days to go over all the details. Now let's talk about your medical treatment, Whitney said when we were done with the will. How do you plan to pay for it? I told him about my conversation with Dr. Bishop, about possible assistance programs and clinical trials. That's good, but you shouldn't rely on that alone, Whitney said. Let's think about what else we can do. Do you have any assets you can sell? I showed him the list I'd made this morning. Not much, he commented, looking at the list. But it's a start. I can help you sell some of the stuff. I have a friend who deals in antique records. He can appraise your collection. And as for the car, maybe you should wait to sell it. I could use it for trips to the hospital. We were discussing options for a while when Whitney suddenly asked, What about your old co-workers? You had good relationships with other truckers, right? Maybe they could help, I wondered. In 30 years on the job, I had actually gotten to know hundreds of people. Some of them became real friends. We exchanged Christmas cards. Sometimes we called each other. But asking them for money, it seemed too much. "I'm not sure I can ask them for financial help," I said. "It's awkward." "I'm not talking about asking for money directly," Whitney clarified. "But maybe one of them knows of a part-time job for you, or some assistance programs we don't know about. That was a good idea. I could contact some of my old friends just to get an update and then maybe mention my situation." "Thanks, Whitney. I'll give it some thought." By the time I got home, it was late. I felt tired, but also a certain relief. I had a plan of action, and that was empowering. I decided not to procrastinate and contact some of my old friends right away. The first person I called first was Leon Paxton, with whom we often crossed paths on the route between the Chesapeake and Atlanta. Leon was surprised at my call, but delighted. "Ambrose, you old devil. Haven't heard from you in ages. What's up?" We talked about little things, his family, my retired life. Then I was careful to mention my diagnosis. "Cancer? Damn sorry to hear that, buddy." Leon's voice became serious. "What do the doctors say?" "The prognosis is not bad if you start treatment in time, but the problem is it's very expensive and my savings are, let's just say they're not available at the moment." "What's wrong?" Leon asked. I summarized what happened with Quentin without going into details. "That bastard, pardon the expression," Leon swore, "stealing from his own father. I don't understand people like that." "I don't either," I sighed. "Anyway, I'm looking for ways to pay for the treatment. I was wondering if you knew of any part-time jobs for an old man like me." Leon thought for a moment. "You know, my brother-in-law runs a small car repair shop in Norfolk. He was complaining the other day that he couldn't find a good receptionist. It's not hard physical work, just taking calls, keeping records, dealing with customers. You could do it, even with the treatment. Do you want me to talk to him?" "I'd appreciate it, Leon." "Consider it done. I'll call you back tomorrow as soon as I talk to him." After talking to Leon, I felt a surge of optimism. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I could handle this situation. The next day, Leon called back with good news. His brother-in-law, Alan Murphy, was willing to meet with me for an interview. The job was part-time, 3 days a week, which fit perfectly with my treatment schedule. The pay was modest, but it was better than nothing. I made an appointment with Alan for the next day. Then I called a few more old acquaintances. One of them, Harry Foster, offered to buy my fishing equipment for his nephew, who was just starting to get into fishing. "I'll give you a good price, Ambrose. It's great equipment, and I know how much you've taken care of it." By evening, I had a plan. Sell the fishing equipment to Harry, give the record collection to a Whitney acquaintance for appraisal, get a job with Alan Murphy. It didn't solve the problem completely, but it was a start. I also decided to look for information about renting out a room. There were 3 bedrooms in my house, 2 of which had been empty since Quentin had moved out. If I could find a decent tenant, it could be a steady source of income. In the morning, a message came in from Dr. Bishop. He had found 2 assistance programs that I fit the criteria for and sent me forms to fill out. He also confirmed that I could be part of a clinical trial for a new treatment method that would significantly reduce my expenses. "The study will start in 2 weeks, he informed me. "But you will need to undergo additional tests to make sure you are a good match." I agreed to the additional tests. This gave me hope that the treatment would start soon. The meeting with Alan Murphy went well. He turned out to be a pleasant middle-aged man who valued punctuality and responsibility, qualities I had always prided myself on. "Leon told me about your situation," Alan said after the standard questions about my experience and skills. "I respect people who don't give up in the face of difficulties. The job is not difficult, but it requires attention to detail and good communication with customers. I think you can do it." We agreed that I would start next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. On my way back home, I stopped by Harry Foster's to give him some fishing equipment. He did give a good price. Not market price, of course, but higher than I expected. The money would have been enough for a down payment on my medical bills. "Thank you, Harry," I said, accepting the check. "You've been a big help." "Come on, Ambrose. How many years have we known each other? 20, 30? You've always been a decent man, and I know you'd do the same for me." His words touched me. After Quentin's betrayal, such support from old friends was especially valuable. At home, I got a call from Whitney. He'd arranged a meeting with Nathaniel Cross for the next day. "He was interested in your case," Whitney said, "especially when he heard about Quentin's situation. Said he'd like to help." "Thanks, Whitney. I don't know what I'd do without your help." "That's what friends are for, Ambrose. By the way, I talked to Jeffrey, a friend of mine who's interested in vintage records. He's willing to come over on Saturday to see your collection." We arranged the details of the meeting with Nathaniel and said goodbye. I sat down at the computer to fill out the forms for the assistance programs Dr. Bishop had talked about. The process was tedious. Lots of questions about my financial situation, my medical history, my marital status. But I realized it was necessary. Once I finished with the forms, I opened up a website with housing listings to research how much they typically asked for a room in the area. Prices varied, but the average came out to about $600 a month for a room with shared access to a kitchen and bathroom. Not bad. I took some pictures of empty rooms and put together an ad. By evening, I felt tired but also satisfied. I had done more in 2 days to solve my problems than I had done in the entire previous week. I had a plan. I had the support of friends. I had my first money. I was beginning to believe that I could manage even without my son's help. Before I went to bed, I looked at Eleanor's picture. "You know, darling," I said, as if she could hear me, "I always thought that I would rely on Quentin in my old age, that our son would be my support when I was weak. But it turns out that the real support has come from friends, from people who don't have to help me, but do it simply because it's the right thing to do." I smiled at the picture. "Don't worry about me. I'll get through this. And when the time comes, I'll tell you how it turned out." With these thoughts, I went to bed feeling strangely calm. Tomorrow would be a new day, new steps to solve the problem. And I was ready for this path, no matter how difficult it was. 2 weeks flew by in a flurry of activity. I started working at Alan Murphy's auto repair shop, filled out the paperwork for financial aid programs, and even found a tenant-a-quiet graduate student from a local college who was happy to rent a room in a quiet neighborhood. Jeffrey, an acquaintance of Whitney's, valued my vinyl record collection much higher than I expected. It turned out that some of the pieces were quite rare. I sold half of the collection, keeping only the records dearest to my heart. The money was gradually accumulating, but it was still not enough for a proper treatment. I had high hopes of participating in the clinical trial Dr. Bishop had mentioned. If I was accepted, most of the costs would be covered by the research grant. On Wednesday, I went to the hospital for a follow-up exam before the study began. Dr. Bishop warned me that the procedure would be lengthy and could cause temporary discomfort. "We will do an extended biopsy and some specific tests," he explained. "You may have to stay in the hospital overnight for observation." I agreed. At the hospital, I was taken to a room where I had to change my clothes and prepare for the procedure. The nurse, an older woman with kind eyes, helped me get settled. "Dr. Bishop will be here soon," she said. "In the meantime, our nurse, Ronan, will help you. He'll accompany you during the procedure and keep an eye on you afterward." A few minutes later, a young man in his 30s entered the room. He was tall, sturdy, with reddish hair and attentive gray eyes. His name tag read Ronan Pierce, nurse. "Good afternoon, Mr. Holder." His voice was unexpectedly soft for such a large man. "I'm Ronan. I'll be assisting you today. How are you feeling?" "A little nervous," I admitted. "I've never liked hospitals." Ronan smiled, and his face immediately became younger and more friendly. It's okay. No one likes them. But I'll try to make your stay here as comfortable as possible. He helped me fill out the final forms, explained what would happen during and after the procedure, and answered my questions patiently and understandably. There was no condescension or formal indifference in his demeanor, which I have often noticed in medical staff. "Do you have someone to pick you up tomorrow?" Ronan asked. "You won't be able to drive for at least 24 hours after the procedure," I wondered. Normally, I would have gone to Quentin in such cases, but that was no longer an option. Whitney was too old to drive me to hospitals. "No," I said finally. "I could call a cab." Ronan frowned. "A cab isn't the best option in your condition. Maybe a friend or family member?" "My son is away." I didn't want to go into details. "And friends my age aren't always available." Ronan nodded understandingly. "Don't worry. We'll figure something out. Perhaps I can give you a ride myself. I live near the Chesapeake." His offer surprised me. "That's very kind of you, but I wouldn't want to inconvenience you." "No inconvenience at all," Ronan smiled. "I'm going in that direction after my shift anyway, and I'll feel better knowing that you've gotten home safely. The procedure was harder than I'd expected. Despite the local anesthesia, I felt discomfort and pain. Ronan was by my side the whole time, keeping the conversation going, distracting me from the discomfort, monitoring my condition. After the procedure, I was transferred back to the ward. I felt very weak and dizzy, side effects of the anesthesia and the procedure itself. Ronan helped me into bed, brought me water, checked my vitals. "Rest, Mr. Holder," he said. "I'll check on you every hour. If you need anything, press the call button." The night passed restlessly. I woke up in pain several times. Ronan showed up quickly each time, gave me a painkiller, helped me change positions to be more comfortable. "Wasn't your shift over?" I asked, noticing that it was getting late. "It was," Ronan admitted. "But I've decided to stay on night duty. We're short-staffed, and I know your case. Dr. Bishop examined me this morning and told me that the results of the procedure looked good, but that it would take a few days to get a final reading. You can go home now, Mr. Holder. I'll contact you as soon as I have the results." Ronan drove me home as promised. We got to talking on the way. I found out he'd been a nurse for 8 years, specializing in cancer patients. "Why oncology?" I asked. "It's a very difficult field." Ronan was silent, concentrating on the road. "My mother died of cancer when I was 16, he finally answered. "I remember how important the nurses' care was to her. They made her last months more dignified, less painful. I wanted to do the same for other people." His candor touched me. "Your mother must have been proud of you," I said. Ronan smiled. "I hope so." When we pulled up to my house, Ronan helped me to the door, making sure I had everything I needed. "Here's my card," he said, holding out a small rectangle of cardboard. "This is my personal number. If you feel unwell or have any questions, call me anytime." "Thank you, Ronan, for everything." The next day, I rested at home recovering from the procedure. The lodger, Jason, even brought me lunch, a simple but nutritious soup that he had made himself. In the evening, Whitney called to see how I was feeling. "How's the procedure going?" he asked. "Did it go okay?" "Yes, although it wasn't easy. But the staff at the hospital are wonderful, especially one nurse, Ronan. He even drove me home after I was discharged." "That's unexpected," Whitney remarked. "The nursing staff doesn't usually provide that kind of service." "He's an extraordinary man," I said. "Really cares about his patients." 3 days later, Dr. Bishop called with good news. I was eligible for a clinical trial. The treatment was to begin in a week. "That's great news, Mr. Holder," Dr. Bishop said. "The study will cover most of the costs of the treatment. You will only have to pay a small amount for additional services." The amount he quoted was considerably less than what we had originally talked about. With my current savings and extra income from work and renting out my room, I could afford it. On the day my treatment started, I was met again by Ronan. "It's good to see you again, Mr. Holder," he smiled. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," I admitted, "but I'm ready to start treatment." Ronan explained the whole process to me, told me about possible side effects and how to deal with them. He was patient and attentive, answering all my questions, even the most stupid ones. "Don't worry, Mr. Holder," he said, when I confessed that I was afraid of side effects. "I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll get through this together." His confidence gave me strength. I began treatment with more hope than I could have expected. For the next 2 weeks, I came to the hospital for treatments 3 times a week. Ronan was always there, monitoring my condition, keeping me talking and distracting me from my discomfort. Gradually, our conversations became more and more personal. I told him about my life as a trucker, about Eleanor, about my complicated relationship with Quentin. He, in turn, told me about his childhood in a small town in Maine, about his mother who raised him alone, about his dream of someday opening a hospice for cancer patients, where patient care would come first. "You have a good heart, Ronan," I once said. "So do you, Mr. Holder," he replied. "Not everyone can survive the betrayal of a son and still retain their dignity and fortitude." In the 3rd week of treatment, the side effects became more pronounced. I felt tired all the time, nauseous, and I lost my appetite. Ronan gave me practical advice on how to cope with these symptoms and brought me special nutritional shakes that he made himself. "My own recipe," he said, handing me a glass of greenish liquid. "Lots of protein and vitamins, but easy to digest and not nauseating." To my surprise, the smoothie was actually helping. I started to slowly gain back the weight I had lost at the beginning of treatment. One day, when I was feeling particularly bad after the treatment, Ronan offered to drive me home and stay with me for a while. "You shouldn't be alone today," he said. "The side effects might get worse by the evening." I agreed, feeling that I really needed help. At home, Ronan helped me get settled on the couch, prepared a light dinner, and made sure I took all my medications. "You don't have to do all that," I said. "I know," Ronan replied simply, "but I want to help." He stayed the night, slept in the guest room, and in the morning drove me back to the hospital for another procedure. From then on, it became a kind of tradition. On days when I felt particularly bad, Ronan stayed with me, helping me through the hard hours. Gradually, a deep friendship developed between us. Ronan was more than just a nurse doing his job. He became someone I could confide my fears, my doubts, my hopes. He listened without judgment, supported without obsession, helped without patronizing. "You know, Mr. Holder," he said one day as we sat on the veranda of my house watching the sunset, "you remind me of my grandfather. He too was a strong man who never gave up in the face of adversity." "I hope that's a compliment," I grinned. "Most sincere," Ronan smiled. "My grandfather was my hero. He taught me everything I know about life. My condition was slowly but surely improving. Dr. Bishop was pleased with the results of the treatment. "You're doing very well, Mr. Holder," he said during another checkup. "Your vitals are improving and the tumor is shrinking. Let's keep it up." That evening, when I got home from the hospital, the doorbell rang. Quentin stood on the doorstep, tanned, rested, with an expensive suitcase at his feet. "Hi, Dad," he said, as if nothing had happened. "Can I come in?" I stepped back silently, letting him into the house. My heart was racing, but I tried to stay calm. Quentin walked into the living room, looking around. "You don't look well," he said. "Are you sick?" "You know I'm sick, Quentin," I replied. "I informed you of my diagnosis before you left for the Bahamas, with my money." His face contorted for a moment, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Oh, Look, Dad, I can explain. I wasn't going to spend all your money. I just needed a little vacation to recover. I was going to pay back every dime." "You did?" I didn't hide my skepticism. "And how were you going to do that?" "I had a plan. I met some people in the Bahamas who offered me a very lucrative project. Investments, real estate, that sort of thing. I could triple my investment in a couple months. I shook my head. The same air castles Quentin had spent a lifetime building. What about the message you sent me? Your treatment is not my problem, not yet. Was that part of your plan too? Quentin looked embarrassed. I was drunk, Dad. You know I would never say something like that sober. I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry. His apology sounded insincere. I could see he wasn't really sorry, just trying to smooth things over. Why did you come back, Quentin? I asked him bluntly. He paused, searching for words. I was worried about you, Dad. I wanted to see how your treatment was going, how you were doing. Are you? Or did you find out I changed my will? His face changed. There was a cold glint in his eyes. What do you mean? You know what I mean. I disinherited you, Quentin. After what you've done, you won't get a dime of my estate. Quentin jumped up from the couch, his face contorted with anger. You can't do this. I am your son, your only son. The son who stole his father's treatment money and flew off to a resort to have fun. The son who wrote that my treatment is not his problem. Such a son doesn't deserve an inheritance. It's not fair, Quentin shouted. I have a right to your property. You can't deprive me of everything. I can, I replied calmly. And I did. The new will has already been drawn up and certified. Quentin looked at me with disbelief and fury. You're bluffing. You couldn't have done it that fast. Call attorney Nathaniel Cross. He'll confirm it. Quentin clenched his fists, his face flushed. This is about my mother, isn't it? You always blame me for her death, always thinking I wasn't good enough. That's not true, Quentin, I tried to speak calmly. I never blamed you for Eleanor's death, and I've always loved you no matter how hard it was. But what you've done now, it's a betrayal I cannot forgive. You'll regret it, Quentin hissed. I'll contest the will. I'll prove that you were incompetent when you made it, that you're a senile old man who doesn't know what he's doing. You can try, I said. But I have medical reports that prove I'm legally competent, and witnesses who will confirm that I was in my right mind when I made the decision. Quentin was silent for a while, obviously pondering the situation. Then his tactics changed abruptly. Anger was replaced by pleading. Dad, please. His voice became quiet, almost pitiful. I know what I did was awful. I didn't realize it was so serious. I didn't realize, but I can make it right. I'll pay you back. I'll take care of you during your treatment. Just give me one more chance. I looked at my son, trying to see some sincerity in him. But all I saw was calculation and manipulation. No, Quentin, it's too late for another chance. You showed me who you really are, and I accepted that. You can't do this to me, he raged again. I am your flesh and blood. Yes, you are my son, and that makes your betrayal all the more painful, but that doesn't give you the right to dispose of my life or my property. Quentin grabbed the vase from the table and threw it against the wall. The vase shattered into tiny shards. You'll regret this, old man, he shouted. I won't let you take everything away from me. At that moment, the front door opened and Ronan entered the living room. He immediately assessed the situation. Is everything all right, Mr. Holder? He asked, looking at Quentin with undisguised suspicion. Yes, Ronan, I answered. My son was just leaving. Who the hell are you? Quentin attacked Ronan. I am a friend of your father's, Ronan said calmly, and I think it's really time for you to go. Mr. Holder needs to rest after today's procedures. Quentin looked from Ronan to me, then back again. So that's it, he said with a nasty grin. You have a new friend. I can see where my inheritance is going. Quentin, stop, I warned him. Don't say something you'll regret. What would I regret? He laughed. The fact that my father traded his own son for some... He used an insulting word I don't want to repeat. Ronan remained unfazed. Mr. Holder, I will call the police if your son does not leave immediately, he said calmly but firmly. Quentin gave Ronan a hateful look, then turned to me. This isn't over, Dad. You'll hear from me again. With those words, he walked out, slamming the door loudly. I sank down on the couch, feeling my strength leaving me. Quentin's reaction was expected, but no less painful. Ronan sat down next to me. "Are you all right?" he asked with genuine concern. "Yeah," I exhaled. It's hard. Despite everything, he's still my son." Ronan put his hand on my shoulder. "I understand, but you did the right thing. You can't let people hurt you, even if they are your family, especially if they are your family." I nodded gratefully. At that moment, I was especially glad Ronan was there for me. His support gave me the strength to deal with the pain of betrayal and move on. It had been 3 months since I'd started treatment. Spring had changed to summer, and the hot Chesapeake days were filled with the scent of magnolias in bloom. I sat on the veranda of my house, enjoying the morning sunshine and a cup of tea. The latest tests showed significant improvement. The tumor had shrunk by nearly 70%, and the levels of cancer markers in my blood had dropped to near normal. "The results are impressive, Mr. Holder," Dr. Bishop said at the last appointment. "You're responding very well to treatment. If this continues, we should be able to talk about remission in a couple of months." I could feel my strength slowly returning to me. The side effects of the treatment, which used to exhaust me to the max, were now less severe. I even went back to work at Alan's car service, albeit with a reduced schedule. Much of my recovery was due to Ronan. He became not just a nurse but a true friend, almost a member of the family. He came not only on treatment days but also on his own time, helping around the house, preparing nutritious meals that I could eat even on days when the nausea was most severe, accompanying me on the walks that Dr. Bishop recommended to help me regain my strength. "You don't have to do all that," I told him more than once. "I know," he always replied with a smile, "but it's my pleasure to help you." On days when Ronan was busy at work, other friends helped me. Whitney often stopped by with his wife Doris, who always brought homemade baked goods. Leon and Harry called and stopped by regularly to visit. Even my lodger Jason, a young graduate student, was caring, helping with cleaning, going grocery shopping when I was too weak. I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, and that gave me the strength to fight the disease. I was especially touched by Ronan's care. In his 32 years, he showed a wisdom and kindness that one rarely finds even in people much older. Once, when we were sitting on the veranda after my return from the hospital, I asked him, "Ronan, why do you waste so much time on an old man like me? You should have a life of your own, friends your own age, maybe a girlfriend." Ronan looked thoughtfully at the horizon. "You know, Mr. Holder, when my mother was ill, we had hardly anyone. My father left when I was 3. Relatives lived far away. We were all alone. I did what I could, but I was only 16 and I didn't know how to properly care for a sick person." He was quiet for a moment. "When Mom was admitted to the hospital, the nurses and doctors became our temporary family. They took care not only of her, but also of me. They showed me how to help my mom, how to ease her condition, just talking to me, supporting me. That care changed my life. I realized I wanted to do the same for others." He turned to me. "When I first saw you in the hospital, you reminded me of my mom. Not in appearance, of course," he smiled, "but in the way you held yourself, with dignity, despite the pain and fear. And I thought, this is someone who deserves all the support I can give." His words touched me to the core. "Thank you, Ronan. You have no idea how much that means to me." That night after Ronan left, I thought long and hard about my life, about the people in it, about Quentin, who had betrayed me in my time of need, and about Ronan, an outsider who had shown more care than a native son, about old friends who had come to my aid when it was sorely needed, and I made a decision that had been maturing in me for some time, but only now was taking final form. The next day, I called Whitney. "I need to make some changes to the will," I said without preamble. "You've decided to forgive Quentin?" Whitney sounded surprised. No, I said firmly. I had decided who I wanted to leave my property to. Whitney arrived an hour later with Nathaniel Cross, the young lawyer who was handling my case. We sat down at the living room table and I outlined my decision. I want to bequeath my house and any remaining savings to Ronan Pierce, I said. He has shown care and kindness that I have not seen from my own son. He deserves it. Whitney and Nathaniel looked at each other. Are you sure, Ambrose? Whitney asked. You've only known Ronan for a few months. Sometimes a few months are enough to get to know a person, I answered. Besides, I'm not leaving him millions. My house and small savings are just a way of saying thank you for what he's done for me. Nathaniel nodded. That's your right, Mr. Holder. I'll prepare the necessary paperwork. But I must warn you that your son may challenge the will, given the relatively short time you've known the new heir. Let him try, I was adamant. We have witnesses who will confirm that I am in my right mind and I make this decision voluntarily. The documents were prepared and signed within a week. I did not immediately inform Ronan of my decision. I did not want him to think that I expected him to care more in exchange for the inheritance. Quentin hadn't shown up since the day he'd made a scene at my house, but I knew he wouldn't give up trying to reclaim his place in the will. And indeed, 2 weeks after the new will was drawn up, he called. Dad, we need to talk. His voice sounded unaccustomedly humble. I've been an idiot. I've realized my mistakes and I want to make things right. I agreed to a meeting, but not at home, but at a neutral place, a small cafe in the center of Chesapeake. I didn't want to make a scene in my house again. Quentin showed up exactly at the appointed time, which was unlike him. He looked collected and serious, even dressed more conservatively than usual. Thanks for seeing me, Dad, he said, sitting down across from me. How's your health? Better, I answered briefly. The doctors say the treatment is going well. That's great, he mimed joy. I'm so happy for you. I stared at him in silence, waiting for him to get to the real purpose of the meeting. Look, Dad, he finally said, lowering his voice. I realize what I did was terrible. Taking your money, knowing you were sick, it's unforgivable. And that message I sent. I was drunk and angry, but that's no excuse. I want to apologize and do everything I can to make things right. How exactly are you going to make it right? I asked. Well, for one thing, I can give you the money back. Not all at once, but gradually. I already have a plan to do that. And I want to help you during your treatment. Be there for you, support you like a son should. I looked at Quentin, trying to find sincerity in his words, but all I saw was calculation. He was saying what he thought I wanted to hear. Why now, Quentin? I asked him bluntly. Why not 3 months ago, when I really needed help? He faltered. Yeah, I needed time to realize my mistakes, to realize what was really important. Or did you find out that I decided to bequeath my house and savings to Ronan Pierce? I asked calmly. Quentin's face changed. Fury flashed in his eyes for a moment, but he quickly pulled himself together. So it's true? His voice trembled with restrained emotion. You're really going to leave all your possessions to some random nurse you've only known for a couple months? He's not random, Quentin. He's the man who helped me when you stole my money and went off to have fun. A man who has shown more care in a few months than you have in all your years. He's manipulating you, Quentin exclaimed, forgetting his role as a repentant son. He saw a lonely old man with a house and decided to gain your trust, don't you see? Didn't you think he was just a good man? I asked. That not everyone pursues selfish goals like you do? Quentin snorted. Don't be naive, Dad. No one spends that much time on someone else's person just out of kindness. He has a plan, you'll see. Maybe, I replied calmly. But so far, the only person who's tried to steal from me is you, my own son. Quentin gritted his teeth. I made a mistake. I've already apologized. What more do you want from me? Nothing, Quentin. I don't want anything more from you. I've made my decision, and it's final. My house and my savings will go to Ronan when I die. You'll get nothing." "I'll contest the will," Quentin hissed. "Prove that you were incapacitated or under the influence, that Ronan won't get a dime." "You can try," I stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "But I've made sure the will is legally flawless. I have medical reports on my capacity, witness statements, a videotape of the signing process. You'll only waste time and money on lawyers." I turned to leave, but Quentin grabbed my arm. "You can't do this to me." I could hear the desperation in his voice. "I'm your son." I released my hand gently. "The son who stole money to pay for his father's treatment. The son who never visited me once in 3 months of illness. The son who only showed up when he found out he might lose his inheritance." I shook my head. "Goodbye, Quentin." I walked out of the cafe feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness at finally breaking up with my son, and relief that I'd finally expressed everything that had built up over the months. Ronan was waiting for me at home. We'd arranged for him to stop by after my meeting with Quentin to make sure everything was okay. "How did it go?" he asked, seeing the look on my face. "As I expected," I sighed. "He tried to manipulate, then threatened to contest the will." Ronan frowned. "The will? What do you mean?" I realized I'd blurted it out, but maybe it was for the best. It was time to tell Ronan about my decision. "I've changed my will, Ronan. You are now my heir. The house and all my savings will go to you when I die." Ronan looked at me in amazement. "What? But why?" "I can't accept it, Mr. Holder. It's too much." "Because you deserve it," I answered simply. "You took care of me when I needed it most, and I know you will dispose of this property with dignity." "But your son," Ronan began. "My son has made his choice," I said firmly. "And I have made mine. Please don't argue with me, Ronan. This is my decision, and I want you to respect it." Ronan nodded slowly. I don't know what to say." "Thank you, Mr. Holder. I will try to be worthy of your trust." "I know you will," I smiled. "And please, call me Ambrose. I think we're past the formalities." The following weeks brought new changes. Quentin, as promised, tried to contest the will. He hired a lawyer who specialized in such cases and filed suit, claiming that I was incapacitated and manipulated by Ronan. But Nathaniel Cross had prepared for this. He had all the necessary documents, medical reports proving my capacity, witness statements, a videotape of the process of signing the will, where I clearly expressed my will. The court rejected Quentin's claim, recognizing the new will as valid. Quentin was furious. He tried to contact me, left angry messages on my answering machine, even came to the house, but I wouldn't answer the door. I didn't want to deal with him anymore. Finally, after several unsuccessful attempts, he left me alone. My health continued to improve. 6 months into treatment, Dr. Bishop announced that I was in remission. "The cancer is gone, Mr. Holder," he said with a smile. "Of course, you'll have to have regular checkups, but the prognosis is very good." It was a victory over the disease, over betrayal, over my own fears and doubts. I celebrated it with the people who had been there for me during this struggle. Ronan, Whitney and Doris, Leon, Harry, Alan Murphy, for whom I continued to work, and even Jason, my lodger. We had a small dinner in my garden. It was a warm autumn evening, and we sat at a long table under an old maple tree, eating Doris's cooking, drinking wine — I was allowed 1 glass by Dr. Bishop to celebrate — and talking. I looked at these people, different in age, background, life experience, but united by kindness and genuine concern for each other, and felt a deep gratitude. "To Ambrose," Whitney raised his glass. "To his recovery and his fortitude. To Ambrose." The rest of the group cheered. I looked at their smiling faces and thought about how strange life was sometimes. 6 months ago, I was sure I was dying, that my son was my only support, that I was alone in the world. Now I was recovering, surrounded by true friends and looking forward to a hopeful future. Ronan sat next to me. He still felt awkward about the will, but he was slowly getting used to the idea that he would own this house someday. "You know, Ambrose," he said quietly, when the others were talking, "I've been thinking about your house, that someday it would be mine." "And what did you decide?" I asked. "I'd like to use it to create a small hospice, a place where people with serious illnesses could be cared for in a home-like setting, with dignity and respect. It's been a dream of mine since my mom died." I smiled. "That's a wonderful idea, Ronan. I think this house would be perfect for such a purpose." Ronan looked at me gratefully. "Thank you, Ambrose, for everything." That evening, when the guests had gone, I sat on the veranda for a long time looking up at the stars. I thought about Quentin, about how he was now living with his anger and frustration. I felt sorry for him, not because he'd been disinherited, but because he didn't understand the true value of family, of friendship, of caring. I thought of Eleanor, of what she would say about my decision to disinherit my son. Perhaps she would be against it. She had always been gentler than me, always willing to forgive. But I hoped she would have understood my motives. "You see, Eleanor," I whispered, looking up at the stars, "I found a family after all. Not the one we planned, but a real one." The next day I learned from Nathaniel that Quentin had sold his apartment and moved to another city. He hadn't left a new address or contacts. Perhaps that was for the best. We could both start a new life, without the bitterness of past hurts. I continued to work at Alan's car service, even though I could have stopped doing so. The money from my room and pension was enough for a modest living. But the job gave me a sense of usefulness, a chance to socialize with people, to structure my day. Ronan became a frequent visitor to my house. We spent evenings talking, playing chess. He turned out to be an excellent player. Sometimes watching old movies, which I loved. He began to bring his friends, and the house, which had long been quiet and empty, filled with life and laughter. One day, Ronan brought a young woman, Lydia, a nurse from his hospital. She turned out to be smart and funny, with a keen sense of humor and a kind heart. I watched Ronan look at her and smiled, remembering how I had once looked at Eleanor myself. Life went on, not as I expected, not as I had planned, but perhaps even better. I lost a son, but found a new family. I faced betrayal, but discovered true kindness. I fought the disease and conquered it. And now, sitting on the veranda of my house, looking out at the blooming garden that Ronan had helped me restore, I felt a deep satisfaction. I knew that when my time came, I would leave behind something good, not just a house and savings, but the memory of a man who had not given up in the face of betrayal and illness, who had found the strength to start a new life when the old one had crumbled. And Quentin, well, he made his choice, and now he's living with the consequences. Maybe someday he'll realize he's lost something far more valuable than an inheritance. But that's not my story. My story is here, with the people who have become my new family, with a new purpose and a new hope. And in this story, despite all the hardship and pain, I have finally found peace.